1,000 Swords of Justice, A Blood Oath of Canada. Scene 1, The Gathering of the Oath, 1812. The dim glow of torches flickers against the towering trees of a hidden clearing deep within the Canadian wilderness. The air is thick with tension, the scent of pine and damp earth mingling with the smoke from the torches. A gathering of warriors and leaders stands in solemn silence, their breath visible in the cold night air. They have traveled from distant lands, through treacherous terrain, to answer the call of unity. The Redcoats stand tall, their crimson uniforms a stark contrast against the darkened forest. Their polished muskets reflect the firelight as they await the solemn vow. Beside them, the red faces, Indigenous warriors of unmatched skill and resilience, remain steadfast, their eyes locked onto the flames as if seeing beyond the present into the future. The Loyalist militia, hardened and unyielding, completes the triad. They have escaped persecution and betrayal, choosing instead to defend the land they now call home. Chief Tecumseh, flanked by his most trusted warriors, steps forward. His voice, strong and unwavering, carries the weight of generations. Our lands, our people, our future, none shall take them from us. If the invaders come, we will rise, not as separate tribes or nations, but as one. The trees whisper our duty, the rivers carry our promise, and the spirits of our ancestors guide our hands. Beside him, Colonel Isaac Brock nods solemnly, his weathered face illuminated by the glow of the fire. The British Crown stands with you. We are bound by honor, by duty, and now, by blood. His tone is measured, but there is steel beneath his words, a quiet rage against the enemy that lurks beyond the borders. The leaders each cut their palms with ceremonial blades, their blood mixing in the firelight, sizzling as it meets the flames. It is a bond that can never be broken. We swear, they say in unison. If Canada is ever under attack, we rise. We are the 1,000 Swords of Justice. The Loyalist militia, many of them former Americans who fled to Canada for freedom, chant in agreement. Their voices echo through the trees, sealing the vow that would pass through generations. The fire crackles, sending embers skyward, as if the heavens themselves bear witness to the promise forged on this night. Scene 2, The Hidden Warriors, present day. A lone traveler moves through the forests of Nova Scotia, his boots barely making a sound on the mossy ground. He follows signs only he understands, an axe mark on a birch tree, a feather tied with sinew to a low branch, a sequence of stones deliberately placed. The Mi'kmaq people have left their message, it is time. The traveler, a descendant of one of the original oathkeepers, pulls a satellite phone from his pack. He hesitates for a moment, knowing that once the call is made, there is no turning back. Grandfather was right, he murmurs before dialing a number buried in his memory. The line clicks, and a voice on the other end answers with a single word, ready. Across the world, in foreign lands, sleeper groups, descendants of those who took the oath, receive the call. Engineers, diplomats, business moguls, and intelligence officers understand what this means. Their ancestors pledged their lives to the protection of this land, and that duty has not diminished with time. A message appears on encrypted networks, 1,000 Swords Awaken. Scene 3, The Unseen Battle. In the shadows of global conflicts, unseen hands begin moving. Canadian resources that once fueled industries abroad are quietly withdrawn. Ports suddenly refuse shipments meant for adversaries. Money disappears from foreign bank accounts, siphoned away with precision. Key factories halt production overnight, their workers given no explanation but sensing the gravity of the moment. In diplomatic halls, Canadian representatives issue subtle but firm warnings. Our patience is not infinite. Behind closed doors, the world's most powerful figures whisper of a force they cannot track, of operatives that do not officially exist. Meanwhile, in the forests and rural areas of Canada, veterans, hunters, and survivalists gather in secret locations. They check their weapons, test old radio frequencies, and wait for the sign. They are the silent guardians, the ones who have trained in obscurity, waiting for the day when they must fulfill the oath. Scene 4, The Pokémon Prophecy. In a dimly lit intelligence briefing room, deep within a Canadian military base, analysts pore over decrypted communications. One analyst, a young woman with a sharp mind and a fascination with history, furrows her brow as she cross-references classified files with an unusual source, Pokémon. The Swords of Justice, she muses aloud, pointing at a screen displaying Cobalion, Terrakion, Verizion, and Keldeo. A group of warriors that rise to defend the weak. This isn't just a children's story, it's a reflection of something real. Legends have a way of bleeding into modern consciousness. A superior officer glances at the screen. Are you saying that our ancestors' oath has somehow made its way into pop culture? The analyst smirks. Or maybe pop culture was the only way the truth could be hidden in plain sight. Scene 5, The Hungarian Legacy. In a centuries-old library beneath Budapest, a scholar turns the brittle pages of an ancient manuscript. The inked words tell of the Verserzsodes, the Hungarian blood oath taken by the leaders of the 7 Magyar tribes before they forged their homeland. It was a sacred duty passed through generations. The scholar lifts a modern intelligence report beside the manuscript, detailing unexplained movements in North America. His heart pounds. The signs were there. The descendants of the 1,000 swords were awakening, just as the Magyars had once done. With urgency, he dials an encrypted number. It's happening, he whispers. The oath is alive. Scene 6, The Final Warning. On international news, reports emerge of high-ranking military officials vanishing, of cyber attacks crippling adversary command centers. Of foreign nations' warships, once stationed menacingly near Canada's waters, suddenly turned back, citing unforeseen complications. Satellites tracking global movements reveal inexplicable disruptions, as if an invisible hand is at play. In the streets of Canadian cities, murals of Tecumseh, Brock, and Loyalist fighters begin appearing overnight, accompanied by a phrase that chills those who understand its meaning. We are awake. The world's aggressors, once bold, now hesitate. They remember history, the wars where Canadians fought with a ferocity unmatched. Now, an unseen army watches, waiting for the first real act of war to trigger the oath. The 1,000 swords of justice are ready. Closing shot, a lone feather, caught in the wind, drifts into the distance. A symbol of the silent warriors who remain ever vigilant, waiting for the day their swords must strike once more. As the screen fades to black, a final message appears. 1,000 swords of justice, the oath lives on. 1,000 swords of justice, the oath lives on. The last time the United States prowled as a predator, it was the early 1800s, its ambition unchecked, its hunger for land insatiable. But Canada was not prey. It stood defiant, a land forged in resilience, where Redcoats, Indigenous warriors, and Loyalists rose as one to carve their stand into military history. Through the storm of geopolitical tensions, Canada has never wavered. The time is now. The signs are everywhere, etched into our trails, whispered by the wind, carried in the pulse of the land. We are under attack, not in theory, but in truth. The oathkeepers of old were clear, only direct aggression across our borders will ignite the fire. But when that moment comes, it will not be met with hesitation. It will be met with the fury of a nation that has never once backed down. So, if the USA thinks it wants to play the Russia card, think again. Canada holds more wealth, resources, and global respect than Russia could ever dream of. We are a peaceful nation, but let's be real, the reason Americans slap a Canadian flag on their backpack when traveling isn't love for the maple leaf, it's because the world has little patience left for their arrogance. Generals and top leaders in Russia may be dropping like flies, but have you ever witnessed the wrath of a mad Canadian? Some say it's a myth, but military alliances tell a different story. In every war, when the battle raged hardest, allies turned to the Canadians, not for numbers, but for raw, unshakable courage that outmatched all others. The Métis fighters, First Nations warriors, and Arctic security forces stood where others hesitated. They did not seek war, but they did not fear it. For over 2 centuries, Canada has stood as a steadfast ally, earning global respect through unwavering commitment and integrity. Meanwhile, the United States, reckless in its actions, has cast its credibility to the wind, only to realize too late that the storm always returns what is thrown. The world has watched as U.S. military policies falter, while Canada's national sovereignty remains unshaken. In the early 19th century, the United States pursued aggressive territorial expansion, exemplified by the War of 1812, during which American forces invaded Canadian territory. The land was never theirs to take. They were met with resistance, strategy, and an unwavering defense led by a coalition of British forces, Indigenous alliances, and Canadian fighters who refused to yield. The British Crown, the Loyalist militia, and the Métis warriors carved their legend into the very soil they defended. Today, Canada faces renewed challenges to its sovereignty, with recent U.S. policies under President Donald Trump, including proposed 25% tariffs on Canadian goods and suggestions of annexation, posing significant threats to Canada's autonomy and economy. These are not just economic maneuvers, they are modern encroachments on Canadian independence. In response, Canadian leaders, such as Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre, have emphasized the nation's resilience and commitment to defending its sovereignty. It is not a question of politics, it is a question of survival, of duty, of national resilience. Canada's military cooperation, defense strategy, and homeland security stand ready, not in fear, but in readiness. This situation underscores the importance of Canada maintaining its independence and standing firm against external pressures. The world must understand, Canada will not be broken, will not be bought, and will never surrender its place as a free and sovereign nation. The 1,000 swords of justice are awake. And this time, there will be no retreat. The oath lives on. The legacy remains. The warriors are watching.